Disaster movies is a relatively new genre of film. Not that there haven't been disaster movies of the past, but it never really became a prominent subgenre of movie until the 90s. If you just Googled 1980s disaster movies, you get like 3 results, and one of them is Airplane.
Surely you can't be serious.
But if you Google 1990s disaster movies, you have a plethora of movies. You have a whole dedicated Wikipedia page to 90s disaster movies. I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that as the 90s progressed, we got bigger and more impressive effects that had more destruction involved in them. I think of Independence Day, I think of Jurassic Park, just large blockbusters that were showing as much destruction as you possibly could. So in response to that, in the 2000s we saw even more disaster movies crop up, but then they began to go in a different direction. It began to be more about natural disasters. Geostorm, San Andreas, 2012, Day After Tomorrow, Into the Storm, Hurricane Heist. There are just so many natural disaster movies coming out nowadays. And since these movies are trying to be as big and large and as bombastic as possible, sometimes they have to take liberties with how a natural disaster will actually play out. When your goal is to just entertain the audience who isn't really thinking about how realistic or how likely these events really are and just want to see some cool action, you get to do a lot more ridiculous stuff with your natural disaster movie. But I thought I would take a look at some of these natural disasters and see how they play out. Point out how many of them are not accurate at all. I understand that they're not claiming to be accurate and they are basically just dumb blockbusters, but some things are a little ridiculous. Taking a look at is San Andreas with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Dwayne Johnson plays the protagonist, whose name is Raymond Gaines, but everyone calls him Ray, so I guess his name is Ray Gaines. Pretty sure it's what my dad uses to keep his hair young and youthful. So the movie's opening up here with this girl who's driving, listening to the radio, kicking back, being young, so happy that she's alive. Okay, you just saw that there was a car oncoming, so your first reaction is to turn around and try to reach for something and take your eyes off the road? Alright. Oh, nice fake out, I guess. Oh, alright, another fake out. Why does the opening of this movie play out like a PSA about texting while driving?
Off your clock, shit!
Now this is
epic.
I give the movie some credit that the fact that earthquakes do cause landslides and that they are an actual hazard that can be faced by people, but I'm gonna take points away for just the fact that this girl either has bones made of vibranium or this is an alien race that is just able to survive anything. I counted 6 flips before she wound up tumbling down a cliff. Like seriously, she didn't even lose consciousness. Her spine should be a bendy straw at this point. Don't you just love it in these big blockbuster movies when a character will face an incredibly severe looking accident, but they'll just have a minor injury or be completely fine, other than a couple of scratches here and there? Yeah, it's definitely the best. Never fear, lady. The rocks may have gotten you into the mess, but the rock is gonna get you out. Also points for the movie for accurately representing the type of helicopters that the LAFD uses.
Chief Gaines, I'm told that between Afghanistan and LAFD, you have over 600 documented rescues. That's pretty impressive.
Just doing my job, ma'am. Go where they tell me to go.
That's great.
Yeah.
Now, the Sendai quake in Japan was considered to be one of the 5 strongest
since 1900.
So Paul Giamatti is a geologist teacher or an earthquake teacher at this university, and he's talking about the history of the largest earthquakes. And for the most part, everything he says is accurate.
The largest ever recorded here in North America, Anchorage, Alaska, 1964, a 9.1. Biggest was 4 years earlier, off the coast of Valdivia in southern Chile, a 9.5 on the Richter scale, right there. This quake lasted 11 minutes and spawned a tsunami 82 feet high that leveled Hilo, Hawaii, 8,000 miles away.
But then there are a few things like this.
Professor, do you think something that intense could happen here?
Well, the San Andreas fault runs right up the spine of California. It's the demarcation line between two tectonic plates that are constantly moving. And add to that the fact that it's supposed to happen every 150 years, and we're about 100 years overdue. I'd say it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
I think the phrasing is just wrong. It's true that there is going to be a large earthquake that will come eventually, but it's not going to be on the level of a 9.1. It's closer. It's more likely to be on the level of an 8 or a 7.
Lawrence, I gotta show you something.
Oh? Uh-huh.
We got a rare low-level seismic swarm out in Falcon, Nevada. 23 small quakes, all tiny, 2.0 to 2.6.
There aren't any faults out there.
Any known faults?
Okay, just a little bit more nonsense here. So apparently there's a newly discovered fault that's right by the Hoover Dam, and they think they can predict earthquakes by using magnetic pulses. So there has been speculation in the past that you could maybe measure magnetic pulse readings to predict earthquakes, but there's never been anything concrete, and there's a lot of problems with that theory. If you're at the Hoover Dam and there's an enormous amount of electricity that's being produced, isn't that going to get in the way of your magnetic pulse readings, like, significantly?
For each one of them.
We got a pattern, my friend.
That was a 2.2.
And is there any actual reason why this guy needs to be inside the dam in order to measure this? And how the hell did he get permission to come down here? They did this the same day, right? Also, if you're down there measuring it, why would Paul Giamatti not go down with you? He's not actually doing anything up top. It seems like the only reason he's down here is that when the earthquake actually strikes, he's in as much danger as possible, so it can be as dramatic as possible.
Yep. We're about to have a major quake.
We jumped to a 7.1. Move the hell out of there.
And as if him being down at the bottom of the dam for some reason while it's all going down isn't dramatic enough, there's this stupid ass little girl with seemingly no parent in sight. So he saves her and this happens. Alright, that's just not possible. Could you imagine kicking your foot through a lead pipe like that? He just fell on top of it. There's no way it would stick right through like that. Okay, bye. You're a piece of shit, Mom. I think we've basically established that Rock is just the most likable, humble, nice, badass, monstrously buff dude on the planet, but for some reason is divorced. That's a very common thing in horror movies, especially bad ones, where the characters will be divorced, and then the person that they are estranged from will be remarrying, and the person that they are gonna marry is a complete asshole. And San Andreas is no different. I will give them credit. The dude that his ex-wife is marrying is not a complete asshole until halfway through the film, but then after that is just the most unbelievable asshole. And I knew when I first saw this movie that he was gonna turn like that. You can see just how he has a nice house, he has a private jet, he makes skyscrapers, he's got those rich puffy lips. There's just something about him that's just evil, and you could tell.
Jim gave his life for this. People need to know that we can predict these things now.
Can you though? You were only getting those readings like a second before they happened when you were at the place. So this reporter's doing an interview with him to talk about what happened in Nevada at the Hoover Dam. And then in the middle, his students are like, hey, shit's about to hit the fucking fan.
From the bottom of the San Andreas up to the Hoover Dam, It almost literally follows the Colorado River. So what if this whole chunk of land is connected to our tectonic plate? That would tell us that what happened yesterday in Nevada was not an anomaly. Boundary fault from Los Angeles all the way up to San Francisco.
If there were somehow a fault that was connected to the San Andreas fault that turned on a 90-degree angle like that, it would actually reduce the shaking. Also, when you were doing the pulse readings at the Hoover Dam, you got them like literally 1 second before it started shaking. Why is that different now?
Are you saying you think the whole San Andreas fault might go off?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Who should we call?
Everybody.
Hello, yes, everybody? This is Paul Giamatti speaking. Shit's about to hit the fucking fan. We come back to Paul Giamatti, and they say that it jumps from a 6.5 to an 8.5.
Lawrence, the Richter just jumped from a 6.5 to an 8.5.
This is false. You will not have a Richter scale jump like that in the midst of an earthquake. It will not gain a higher Richter scale as it progresses. It will all be the same when it starts shaking.
What does that mean?
Powers of 10. So it's 100 times stronger now. Don't worry, Caltech is probably the safest place to be right now.
Professor, it looks like the whole San Andreas fault line is being activated. And it's heading towards San Francisco.
And also, earthquakes are not heading up the coastline. If the fault is rupturing, it is rupturing. It is not going to chase up the coastline for any reason. It is incredibly unlikely that you will see a seismic wave like this from the air. It would not be this noticeable. So like the good guy protagonist that The Rock is, he completely abandons his original course to go help the other people and turn around and go help his wife. Pretty sure he'd be in trouble for that, but alright.
Shit, you're on the top floor. And Melissa, get as many people as you can and get to the roof. I'm in the helo and I'll get you from there, okay?
Okay.
I love how he doesn't specify like 4 or 5 people, just as many. Pretty sure you can't fit all the people in that restaurant up there, Rock. You should tell her to be a little bit more selective, just because you might have to do some unfortunate cherry picking when you get to the top. Luckily for The Rock, no one goes up with her. I guess no one's gonna help this guy. Stop, drop, and roll, bitch. Also, I just want to say this so I don't have to repeat myself. I do like how they have the buildings sway from side to side because California and San Francisco buildings are designed that way to sway back and forth in the event of an earthquake to reduce damaging. But it kind of looks like it's making the damage worse, which is kind of inaccurate. It would be helping, not hurting. It looks like whatever steroids the girl in the opening was injecting into herself passed on to the wife at some point, because holy crap, she would not be able to survive that. No, yeah, that's totally the injury you would sustain if you were repeatedly banging your head on a 30-foot drop on concrete. A fucking nosebleed. Okay, when you saw The Rock make that face, what did you think he was trying to convey there? I'm pretty sure they're going for a sigh of relief, but he looks like mad or disappointed. God, are you kidding me again with this? She couldn't even bring one freaking lousy person to this roof. Alright, so I figured I'd address this right now. When you see all these fires and things like exploding throughout the city, that is actually quite accurate to something that could happen during an earthquake. When the ground shakes, a lot of gas and water pipes are all ruptured, causing fires. It's actually one of the most devastating hazards of an earthquake, because since the water lines are busted, firemen have a more difficult time putting out these fires. I don't exactly know about the fire starting on the roof. I think it's plausible that there could be like some gas that, you know, leaks into the roof and like causes a flame like this. But when you see the wide shots of the fires going off, that is accurate. A building of this size in California is definitely built with the intention of staying upright during an earthquake. Now, Paul Giamatti at the beginning of the film hinted at this being on the level of like a 9, but when the San Andreas fault does erupt, it would not be a 9. The movie was hinting that because the fault that they discovered in Nevada is connected to San Andreas fault, that it'll be worse, but there's just no accuracy to that. It's more likely that shaking would be reduced if what was being portrayed in the film was true, and there's no way that these buildings would collapse like this.
I got you.
It's an earthquake.
Go, 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 go! Get us out of here! Moving, let's go! There's a girl trapped in a town. Where? In the parking lot. Out the building! Get outside!
This is Ray.
Please help!
Blake, what's
So
wrong?
the Rock's daughter calls him and says, "I'm trapped and I need help." And then the Rock decides that he's gonna fly all the way to San Francisco in order to help his daughter on his helicopter. Now that's very nice of him, but he is in the LAFAD, not the SFFD. I'm pretty sure he can't just abandon LA entirely to just fly off to save his daughter. I get that it's important, but pretty sure he shouldn't be allowed to do this. The time that he's going to spend flying to San Francisco, he could be saving a lot of people in LA that really need him. What was that you said, The Rock, at the beginning of the movie? About your rescuing?
Just doing my job, ma'am.
Seems like you don't really like to do your job that much.
Is Daniel okay?
He left me, Mom.
He left her?
Hello, this is the voicemail of the evil stepdad in the movie. I just wanted to say that, boy golly, did I love abandoning my stepdaughter in a garage. I just love that feeling of abandoning children, and I also kill puppies. Okay.
You left my daughter? If you're not already dead, I'm gonna fucking kill you.
Oh yeah, in case you forgot literally 10 seconds ago when we just called this guy an asshole, we're gonna reiterate the point that he's an asshole by making him do this.
Get up, my
Alright, if a building fell down, yeah, there would be a lot of debris, but it wouldn't be like hurricane-level winds picking up people as they came. No one is in any real danger here, they just need to get down and cover their face. But we really gotta make sure you know that this guy's an asshole, so his death feels more cathartic and less sadistic. So there's a boy that the daughter met in the lobby of the building who's gonna help her get out after her Mr. Fantastic piece of shit stepdad left. So he gets her out, they run outside, and they're experiencing more aftershocks, so they need to get away from buildings, but then immediately run inside a concrete structure with no cover. Seems like the worst place to be. So on their way to San Francisco, they encounter some engine failure or a gearbox hit or something. And originally I thought, oh hey, that's actually accurate, because when they were flying in the debris cloud, it's very likely that debris can get into engines and make them fail. That's why whenever a volcano erupts, it's incredibly dangerous for planes and helicopters go anywhere near the ash that erupts from it, because if it gets into the engine, it fails. So I thought they were incorporating that same idea to the debris from the earthquake. But in actuality, I think they just like hit a building a little bit, according to what The Rock says. So that kind of stinks.
Almost there. Almost there. We're just gonna set her down right here.
Careful. Careful. Gently. Dwayne, just land on the shopping cart. Who cares? Dude, this guy sucks at looting.
I've been needing that truck.
You ever see those videos online where like a little dog or a cat will like attack a bear or fight like a really large animal? I think that's the scenario this guy's got going on in his head right now.
Not today.
So Paul Giamatti is addressing the people of the world thanks to them hacking a media outlet or something. That the earthquake they felt was just the beginning and that there's going to be a worse one. And he labels it a swarm event, which is accurate. The swarm events are real things that do happen.
San Francisco will get hit again, and it's going to be a bigger monster this time. Our models are predicting a 9.5 or greater. It will be so big that even though it's happening here in California, you will feel it on the East Coast.
Now, that might be an exaggeration. In 2011, when that earthquake was in Virginia and registered like a 5.8 or something, people said that they were feeling it in Louisiana. That's likely not the case, and they just said they felt it because it was a big event that they wanted to be a part of. It's very unlikely that the people on the East Coast are going to feel that 9.5 or whatever. Maybe some minor shaking, but it's highly unlikely. Also, if you're Paul Giamatti and you want to warn the people, I get that, but his phrasing is like begging people to start panicking.
I cannot emphasize this enough to the people of San Francisco. You need to get out, and I mean now. And if you can't, you need to find any means possible to drop, cover, and hold on, because your life is going to depend on it.
That is maybe not the way you want to phrase this when you're trying to get people to prepare for an earthquake. Ah, Hollywood's favorite. The ground coming apart.
What is this?
San Andreas fault.
It is 100% false. This would not happen. When an earthquake is happening, the plate boundaries are shifting. They're shifting alongside each other. They're not moving away from each other. You would not have a giant chasm open up like this. Alright, so I haven't gone over these two at all because they're incredibly boring and I don't care about them. But basically they're two British people that are coming over for this guy's job interview. And he brought his little brother along so he could see San Francisco or something. And he's got this book with all the San Francisco stuff on it. So they're going to higher ground, which is accurate. That is what you should do in the event of an earthquake. And the higher ground that they're going to is Nob Hill.
Nob Hill is quintessential San Francisco, with much to offer its residents.
And the kid's reading the book aloud to, share the information with the other two. And this is what he discovers.
Did you know knob is a slang term, which means rich or wealthy? It's a shortened version of the word nobility.
I mean, how lazy can you get? That is a chiefly British slang term. Why would this kid not know what that means or share it like it's interesting? Come on. It's a minute detail, sure, but it just illustrates how lazy this film is. Alright, now look, I'm all for some destruction porn in my blockbusters, but usually it helps if the threat that's destroying everything is like viable, like a monster, or it's like a weapon of sorts. It looks like these buildings are made from styrofoam. Literally every skyscraper collapses like a house of cards. Oh yeah, and since we've already shown The Rock abandoning people like several times in the movie, we gotta remind you that he's the good one.
It's not safe here. Get to the side of the stadium. Go to the side of the stadium right now. Just put the side of the stadium right now. Side of the stadium. Get to the side of the stadium.
So he tells everyone to get next to the stadium, and then they say this.
How'd you know we'd be safe?
Just get up against something sturdy. Protect yourself.
That is accurate. You should get up against something sturdy if you can. Maybe not something where glass is like possibly going to crash down below you, because that could lead to some serious cut injuries. But I think the sentiment is there. So now we're getting a tsunami warning, which has several inaccuracies, both for tsunamis and earthquakes. One of the only things accurately portrayed about a tsunami here is the fact that the water recedes before the tsunami comes. That is actually what happens. What is not accurate is the fact that the San Andreas fault would cause a tsunami. The San Andreas fault is very inland and is not in the ocean floor, so it's not disrupting the ocean floor, which would not cause a tsunami. Especially not one of this level. I get that the film is going for the 9.6, the record breaker, but it still just wouldn't happen. Also, they don't crest, as The Rock says here.
Alright, hold on. We gotta get over it before it crests.
Tsunamis do not crest. Tidal waves crest, which are very different from tsunamis. Tsunamis are caused by things like earthquakes, volcanoes, or landslides. Tidal waves are the tides. The reason why the tsunami was so deadly in Japan is A, it's because the actual earthquake was disrupting ocean floor, and B, Japan was not nearly as prepared for it as they should have been. I also like the idea that everyone just had the same thought as The Rock. Oh, we gotta get up it before it crests, so they all race towards it as fast as they can. I guess that's the only option if you're on a boat, but like, it seems like some people would be going the other way. Also, there's no way any of these boats are making it up this 90-degree angle to get over this tsunami. This is the most ridiculous shit I've ever seen. I don't even know how the boat would start to go up like that at that height. It would probably just start crashing into the water directly.
We're gonna make it!
What do you say when the whole class figures out it's your feet that smell like cheese?
Oh, shit!
I don't know if a cargo ship like this would be carried like that, but it does look kinda cool, so I'll let it slide. We get to bang out 2 disaster movie cliches in one: the death of the stepdad and the Golden Gate Bridge being destroyed.
That's no good.
I'll give the movie some props. This is a lot of chaos and implied death here. Oh, Henry, remember how we always wanted to take that cruise? Well, it looks like the cruise is coming to us. Alright, why does LA and San Francisco both look like they're completely empty whenever The Rock is in the aftermath of a major event? You'd think when he's driving the boat along, there'd be people like swarming at the top, like help, help. There'd be people like floating or just anything or any signs of life. What is this, 28 days later? One explanation might be that it would get in the way of the fact that The Rock would have to abandon people and he would look a little bad if he was like leaving people behind to drown there when he's supposed to be the rescuer type. Another reason is maybe they just didn't want to CG in extras or pay extras to be in it, or it'd be very expensive to film those stunts. Either way, it just looks really lazy. They pass like 6 people here, but that's it. Were these buildings completely abandoned? Another reason might be that PG-13 is the most lucrative rating you can get, and if you were putting in dead bodies floating in the water, that might be a little too much, and you would lose a major chunk of your target demographic if you did do that. So they just didn't give a shit, and they just didn't do it. I just find it really distracting when you're implying this level of chaos, but you don't really have the balls to actually show the consequences of it. I gave it credit for showing some people getting swept up or things crushing people, but in the aftermath, you can't just imply that all this destruction is happening in a major city and just have nothing left, no reminiscence of the human life that was there. It's just ridiculous.
Hey! I can see some people in a boat!
That's the worst Cockney accent I ever heard in my life.
So they conveniently stroll right past the building that their daughter is actually in, but luckily that kid from earlier stole a laser pointer just for this moment in the plot.
And if we don't get to her soon, we're gonna need some gas. We got maybe an hour and a half tops before
Right.
we... Yeah.
Hold on.
Oh my god! Oh my god, it's Blake!
I will say, it actually is a good idea to have battery-powered flashlights with you in case you are in dark spaces and in case you need to see something or signal to somebody that you're there. So, stupid plot, convenience, but accurate for an earthquake, I guess. Alright, so there's not too much more that the film does with the actual disasters. Basically, it's just the rock breaks into the building and tries to save the daughter who's drowning. A few things to point out here is that when they try to break open the window, he's getting it with the lead pipe and he's almost got it, but then the wife decides the best way to get in is to just crash the boat directly through. Don't think that would happen. Pretty sure that wouldn't work, but whatever. They get out and they survive. They look on to what it remains of the San Francisco city, and they say they need to rebuild, and that's San Andreas. A terribly inaccurate portrayal of earthquakes and tsunamis and things of that nature. Just trying to be as crazy and as action-packed as possible without letting things like accuracy get in the way. People went to see this movie not to see characters, not to see an interesting story, but to just see The Rock survive in a natural disaster movie. And at the end of the day, can you really fault somebody for that?
767 minutes, got double bedroom